So this is a Path of Exile 2 interview / documentary. I wanted to see as much info as we can get on Path of Exile 2 because I'm actually extremely excited about it. So I wanted to see what they had to say here. Let's see what we got going on.
It seems the old ways still hold some power.
The roll is going to be interesting. The fact you can roll in POE 2. And WASD is what I'm mostly excited by. Does it seem to me like since the scale is a little bit different than POE 1? Like it's very similar, but the scale seems slightly different. I don't know if maybe I'm wrong, but I think it looks good. I get some drone footage here. What is this? It's a nice intro for a video.
I am Mark Roberts, and I am a game director on
Mark
Path of
Roberts.
Exile 2. Path of Exile 2 is a game where you start very immersed in the world and over time can grow to have the power of a god, wiping out screens and screens of monsters and creatures in this dark, gothic horror world. And you can do all this through deep itemization systems and character builds and create any character you could ever hope to imagine.
The druid combo with Volcano looks crazy. I'm having a hard time picking between the mercenary and druid.
Path of Exile 2, or especially the Act 4 around the Karui archipelago, comes from New Zealand nature. And I've grown up here my whole life, and it's very, very pleasing to see so much of New Zealand's nature, like the trees, from the Pahudakawa through to the Nikau. We've got cabbage trees, all being represented in game.
Man, the graphics look so much better.
That's more my forte. We have a lot of the birds. So as critters you can find on these islands, you've got even the insects. You've got the New Zealand weta. You've got roas, which are based on the moa of New Zealand. And
the roa. If I had $1 every time I died to this stupid roas, man.
Things like the tui, which we just saw fly just past moments ago. You may think, well, how does that work in a dark, horror, gothic game? And where most of the game is to that style.
Man, look at that. Look at that. All right, doesn't that look so much cleaner? Man, I can't wait for this beta going into Path of Exile 2. Like, I'm having so much fun with Path of Exile 1. Now Path of Exile 2 feels like a Christmas present.
We do break away from that a little bit and get you outside into exterior areas where it shows all this, only to then bring you right back into that gore and horror environment.
Oh, Jesus.
Or we put interesting twists on it so that there is something sinister going on. Like one example with one of the islands we have in Act 4 is that, sure, the island seems super peaceful. It seems like this beautiful New Zealand island or Pacific island. Actually, though, there have been a bunch of the Karui people who have tried to settle there, and they keep getting killed and eaten by something. What's happening is that these horrific siren creatures come out of the caves underneath the island at night and eat everyone. And all of a sudden now this very pristine, amazing island has this backstory to it that's just filled with, you know, monstrous atrocities. But it still allows us
to... Hey, look, they're keeping the Metroid characters. They got the Metroids in here still.
To get these beautiful trees and animals and all of this into the game, and it's just not something I've ever seen in any other game personally, and I think a lot of people are really going to appreciate that, and it's the second best thing to coming here in person, honestly.
I've never been to New Zealand, but I heard it's beautiful, and I didn't realize so many of the Path of Exile people, you know, like the game itself is being developed there, Quinn, the streamer, like I didn't realize there were so many people actually out of New Zealand for Path of Exile, right?
So my name's Jonathan Rogers,
and I'm the
game director on Path of Exile 2. So one of the things I've really enjoyed when designing Path of Exile 2 is just being able to surprise team members by the kind of changes that we're willing to do. So when I suggested, hey, maybe we should have WASD controls for our characters as well as click to move.
Oh God, this is the WASD for me is such a massive W. I was very sad when D4 didn't have WASD because I was really, really hoping for WASD. Like, I'm an MMO, Andy. I played with WASD in like all the games, so I know that, you know, ARPGs, a lot of people use mouse anyway, but I'm one of those people that is a WASD guy.
Willing
for sure.
to make those kind of changes to actually make the game better. I think it's something that's going to, you know, really impress existing players as well as new players coming to the game who maybe thought they weren't interested in playing before.
It really is beautiful over there, isn't it, huh? Oh, that's cool.
And one of the things
Oh,
we really
jeez.
wanted to make sure that we were doing with it is to make the action combat really, really excellent. We just want to make sure that anyone playing the game, you can play it like an action game, feels fun to play. We've added things like
The
dodge
bosses
rolls
look
and,
great.
cancelling, things like this. And it just means that the game just feels a lot better than it previously did, as well as everything else that you'd expect from a sequel to Path of Exile.
One thing in particular that sets Path of Exile apart is obviously the depth, but in the itemization systems, crafting systems, but also the sheer number of quantity of monsters, encounters. Like, we have over a decade of content that is going to be available in Path of Exile 2 as well.
True.
For Path of Exile 2, we really want to keep the mechanics from Path of Exile 1 that are great, but we can now have the opportunity to rebuild them or restructure them in a way that is easier to understand and much more.
Look at these figurines he's got for like inspiration next to him while he's doing the art. I say this all the time, but the artists for game companies are always like my heroes, because I feel like the art makes or breaks a lot of games for me personally. So when I see really, really good art in the game, like Ori and the Blind Forest is an example. Like, you see really good art in the game, sometimes it can carry the games like super hard.
More accessible for someone coming at it for the first time, and keep that depth there, either hidden away or much more natural to understand.
I think there's a big difference between depth and complexity. Path of Exile 2 in some ways is less complicated than Path of Exile 1 because we've simplified the sort of technical complexity around doing things like the way you socket skills and things like that.
This part looks amazing. Like the skill gems, so coming into the game, Ink with the tier 1, thank you. Coming into the game, the part that was so confusing for me was the skill gem portion, especially trying to figure out how the skill gems interact with the support gems and all that. The way they're doing this here is kind of exciting for me. You get kind of the sockets on the side, etc. I think this would make it more accessible to like new players. Being able to understand how the skills work, or at least have like a separate menu for it. It's a little confusing when it gets on all the gear, etc. So I'm hoping this skill gem takes down that barrier of like confusion for people so that more people try the game out and don't get intimidated by it.
Make it easier to understand, but at the same time, we're making sure that we keep all the depth in terms of character options and things that you can do. So everything is still there as far as like, what can I do to build my character? It's just that it is easier to do so because you don't have to be worrying, for example, about when you're changing your items that you're going to break the way your skills are working and things like that. So I think that actually new and regular players can tolerate a lot of depth. It's the complexity that we want to try.
The volcano druid combo where you can do the volcano and then the druid like stomps on it and makes the more volcano come out. It's just so cool, man. The way the skills interact with each other, where they're almost like combos from like a Street Fighter game or something, that's gonna make the game pretty big for me.
It's scarier to look at than it is to just start playing. If you start playing, you'll probably find you'll just have fun. But yes, we're not oversimplifying anything that the POE 1 players very much love, which is being able to build your character and break the game is the thing I like to do.
So the dodge roll actually came about because we really wanted to be able to find a way to having some skills that took longer to do than other skills. But the problem with that is that skills feel really terrible if you start them and then you can't get out of them. So
this is such a great point. I didn't think about this for the roll. I just thought it was going to be a dodge ability. But if this allows you to break your channel, that's actually pretty big, because I've been playing the Palpatine build, right, which has a, like greater echo as well as spell echo in it. So I shoot, if I right click, I shoot 4 times in a row, which is why I have to have cast speed, because I click it and it goes choo 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 choo. And if I do that 4 times in a row, I'm probably going to get slapped. So my timings of when I can actually like shoot a boss are very, very limited. And that's on my own for using Spell Echo. But it made me feel the concept that he's explaining, which is that when you cast an ability and getting locked into it, it feels clunky.
Really needed a way to make that interruption be possible, and the dodge roll was a really great way to do it.
It's a good point by him.
We actually already had a philosophy for Path of Exile 2 boss design where we wanted to make sure that everything was dodgeable, but previously we were just doing that by running around. But I think the dodge roll has actually changed a lot of things, especially because, you know, now that you can expect a player to be able to do that, it means that we can have the expectation and the balance as well.
We've done fresh design on everything.
That worries me mildly about needing to dodge everything, because if they balance it around dodging and I'm in my Alaskan internet with my ping, I'm going to want to be like Pox and move directly on top of the server so I can have 3.5 millisecond ping. Because right now I have 100 and something plus on average.
We've taken some elements from POE 1 in terms of monsters, specific monsters, and brought them over and kind of, because they were fun to play. Like, why not replicate something that is still fun to play? But of course, it's full fresh coat of paint. There are definitely new systems. I'd say a lot of the monsters are faster, for example, which is where dodge roll helps to come into play. We have secondary AI systems that allow the monsters to do skills while they were performing another skill. Much like how a player can dodge roll to interrupt a skill, a monster can now do the same thing. We have a lot more monsters doing interactions with the environment. They'll interact with the world more. A lot more spawning from things, a lot more, like in one of our areas, the Isle of Kin, we have monsters riding on top of another monster, and then when they get
See,
close, they
that
jump
looks
off.
so cool. Like the impact of the effect on the environment is a big difference I'm noticing too. Instead of just my character that's in whatever map, like it kind of seems like when he's hitting the ground here, like the rocks or the color of the ground, etc.
The skills in Path of Exile have a lot of synergy between them in a lot of different ways. We're not restricting ourselves to focusing on just cooldowns or just resources to build up and then use skills. A lot of situational dependent things, so you want to wait for the right moment to use the thing, you want to adapt the skills you're using to the situation you're in, or you want to be managing a combination of resources or some special mechanics, or whether you're on low health and taking advantage of that.
There are no skills where you feel like they're applicable to every single situation. You're going to want to sort of rotate between different things. And that's where all the kind of comboing and making sure that skills have interesting interactions together comes from. Also,
That's a cool point too about not just one skill for everything, because you do kind of fall prey to, I have one ability and then I have abilities that modify that ability. Like I have lightning and then I have something that lowers their defenses for lightning and all of my damage comes from my one lightning move or what have you. So if we do actually have to use all these different skills, that would be kind of preferable,
when we're
I
looking at
suppose.
support gems as well, when we're looking at things, we've got to say, okay, if this is a support gem that you could just put on every skill in your build, that means it's not a good support gem. They all need to have a very specific, this is going to work well with this skill that I want to use in this situation, as opposed to just something I just spam into each one. So there's a lot of design changes that have had to gone on to take into account the way that the new skill system works.
Looks like
But
Merville
even just the
2.0.
more fundamental design changes we made, like the reason why we changed it so that every skill can be a 6-link is because if you don't do that, that really incentivizes you to have only one or two skills that are the ones you primarily use. By giving every skill that ability, it means you can have a skill that you just use occasionally. In POE 2, we're just like, okay, what's every single barrier to being able to use a big variety of skills? Let's try and knock all those barriers down. And I think that as we approach each different character class, we're thinking like, how can we make the skills here feel so different than every other class? So with something like the Mercenary now, we're developing how crossbows should work. We kind of really looked at that and thought, okay, how can we make crossbows just
shotgun's
feel
so
completely
cool.
different than bows? You know, if you look at a shooter, it's like pistols and shotguns and things like that. Like, what about those makes them different from each other? And so therefore, it makes the whole experience just feel so different than what a bow feels like now. You know, you want that like pull the trigger and it instantly fires, you know, that kind of instant response type of thing. And I think that as we approach each different character class, we're thinking like, how can we make the skills here feel so different than every other class?
Every weapon type really feels like a completely different playstyle. It's got a different feel to it. It's sometimes even got a different way of how it utilizes the controls of the skill system or the game mechanics themselves. And the really cool part is that you can mix and match them by having two different weapons and swap between two different playstyles.
See, I'm wondering if that is going to be the solution to the problem of you only use one ability and you crank this one ability and one ability is better than all the others. If you can actually, there's a cooldown associated with ability, then you can use the other ability with all of your skill passive trees like registered to that one. You can swap back and forth like they were showing on the other footage. That might be a solution to you only spam one ability over and over and over again. I sure hope so.
Combine these things because they're all gems. They're never class locked. Even though each class has its built-in feel, it has the ability to change it up and mix it up and combine the mechanics in some ways that we haven't even predicted yet.
For each class, it's back to basics. You know, like let's actually think about what makes this class fun to play, what kind of issues the players have, what annoys them, what can we do to address those kinds of concerns and make the gameplay just a lot better.
My personal favorite of the classes is definitely the Huntress, because her spear gameplay is a real fun mix of situational things of right now I want to be up close, now I want to get away and hit them with some spears from range.
I think really the Monk has been my favorite one, and I think the reason why is because it's the first class where I think we really nailed the kind of new feel of combat. We put a lot of effort into making sure that it feels fast, you're going in and out of combat, there's a lot going on, and it just felt so different than what we've done before.
And I want the mercenary, the
actually
druid.
Be the brute. Mostly that's because how it feels to play against bosses for me. It's got a very, very clean set of combos that are just very fun and satisfying to execute. It's the armor break, armor break, armor break, and then you get to, depending on a situation, decide how am I going to utilize this armor break. Am I going to leap in and do a stun?
That's
and
cool.
If so, a heavy stun, and then the heavy
And that is
stun
a
goes off, and then
long
I get
charge
to
up.
now decide, okay, how am I going to utilize that heavy stun? And so you're getting these moments where it's just you're setting up a situation that could fork into multiple situations of choice.
I'll be honest, I never like warrior in almost any of these games. I don't know why. I've just never been like the dude with the hammer build. That just isn't me. Normally, I feel like I can pick up a sword in real life and be terrible with it, but at least I can do the same thing. Whereas in these games, it's like I can't shoot lightning in real life. Like I want to cast a spell or something. You know what I mean?
Which can fork into multiple more situations of choice. Either way, it's very fun and very satisfying. For those who are wishing to join us,
The mercenary looks amazing.
Visit our website at pathofexile2.com, wishlist us on Steam, and I'm looking forward for you to join us playing the beta in 2024.
This game cannot come out soon enough, man. Not till 2024, but man, it looks good. I cannot wait. Druid or Mercenary is going to be the class I'm going to pick between, which is going to be pretty rough at the moment. But I think my favorite thing about it is the new graphics, WASD movement, dodge row, and then the ability to swap your skill tree basically based upon which skill gem you're using, etc. That whole thing they showed in the other video where it's like, I'm casting this move, so I use this whole passive tree and then this whole passive tree. Like, that's going to add some layers to depth of this game. It's just a bummer. We got to wait all the way to 2025 for the release. Hopefully the beta goes all the way through until the release of the game or something, and then we'll actually have something to play in the meantime. But man, I'm excited for this one.